She believed a few carefully crafted comments would be enough to get a black man kicked out of first class, until he calmly reached into his pocket and revealed his FBI badge. Patricia Langford glided through Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her luxury carry on rolling soundlessly behind her. She'd taken this same route countless times, Dallas to Washington, D.C., always in first class. Flying had become routine, priority boarding, a glass of complimentary champagne, quiet exchanges between professionals. To her, first class meant comfort and exclusivity. But when she arrived at her designated row and spotted a black man in a sharp navy suit already seated next to her, she hesitated mid-step. He exuded quiet authority, his laptop open, eyes skimming the screen with focused intent. Patricia tightened her lips. She placed her designer tote down, just a bit harder than necessary, then sat down, barely concealing her irritation. This wasn't how she imagined her first-class experience. The man, Daniel Stokes, didn't glance her way. He remained engaged, fingers flying across the keyboard, fully immersed in whatever he was reading. The light from his screen illuminated his dark complexion, casting his features in a sharp, commanding silhouette. Everything about him radiated belonging. Patricia wasn't so sure. She took a measured breath through her nose, subtly shifting in her seat. Her purse brushed against his armrest. He didn't flinch. She straightened up, scanning the cabin, half expecting a flight attendant to notice what she assumed was a mistake. Then she leaned slightly toward him, just enough to make herself noticed. "Excuse me," she said in a deliberately composed tone. "Are you certain this is your assigned seat?" Daniel didn't glance up. Yes. That was all. No further comment, no justification. She cleared her throat again and looked around the cabin. This time she caught the attention of a flight attendant. Emily Jacobs, a woman in her early 30s, was helping other passengers nearby. Patricia lifted a hand in a subtle wave. Daniel sighed, quiet but unmistakable. Emily approached, her professional smile firmly in place. "Is everything okay, ma'am?" Patricia gave a soft, practiced laugh, shaking her head as if the whole thing were slightly humorous. "I think there's been a little confusion," she replied lightly. "I believe this gentleman may be in the wrong seat." Emily glanced over at Daniel, who finally stopped typing and lifted his gaze. His face showed no emotion, but there was something in his eyes. Not surprise, not confusion. Something else entirely. Emily retrieved the passenger list from her tablet and quickly reviewed the seat numbers. "Actually, Mr. Stokes is in the correct seat," she said kindly. "Your ticket is for 2A, and he's seated in 2B. Patricia blinked, her grip tightening slightly on the armrest. "That's strange," she said with a forced laugh. "Are you certain? I mean, I just assumed." Emily offered a polite smile, already understanding where this conversation was heading. "I'm positive, ma'am. Everything checks out." Patricia's mouth twitched, her carefully composed face faltering just a moment before she covered it with a strained smile. "Well," she breathed, "I guess mistakes do happen." She turned back to the window, though she wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Daniel, meanwhile, had already returned to his work. Emily paused briefly, sensing the unspoken tension, then gave Daniel a courteous nod and moved along. But Patricia was fuming. Her fingers drummed lightly on her knee, her breathing shallow. Her eyes flicked toward the flight staff, then back to Daniel. He remained unfazed, not apologizing, not justifying himself. He wasn't playing into the script she'd expected, and that irritated her more. She wasn't someone who let things go quietly. Patricia wasn't built for silence. She felt the urge to act. Arms folded tightly across her chest, she sat rigid, her mind racing. This didn't feel right. She had traveled first class for years, and never, not once, had she found herself in a situation like this. The man beside her hadn't done anything inappropriate, but that didn't change how she felt. He didn't fit. Her breaths came quicker, agitation bubbling beneath the surface. Sitting still and accepting this wasn't an option, she pressed the call button. A soft tone chimed above her head, and within moments, Emily Jacobs returned. Her expression hadn't changed, still friendly, still professional. "Is there something I can assist you with, ma'am?" she asked politely. Patricia kept her voice calm and measured, lowering it slightly. "I'd like to switch seats," she said. Emily looked momentarily surprised. "Oh, is something wrong? Is the seat uncomfortable?" Patricia paused briefly. She couldn't say what she really felt. Instead, she leaned subtly in Daniel's direction and lowered her voice more. "It's just that. I don't feel at ease sitting here," she said slowly, carefully choosing her words. Emily's smile dimmed slightly. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. If there's an issue with the seat itself, I'd be happy to know." Patricia interjected. "It's not the seat." She let out a short sigh. "I'd just prefer a different spot." Emily's eyes flicked to Daniel, who had once again paused his typing. He hadn't spoken, but he was clearly listening, his hands hovering above his keyboard, jaw set. "Let me check to see if any seats are available," Emily said, tapping her tablet. "One moment." Patricia leaned back, lips pursed tightly. Daniel didn't flinch, didn't ask questions, didn't meet her gaze. His indifference irritated her more. A few rows ahead, a man in a sports coat subtly turned, pretending to look at his phone, but clearly eavesdropping. Across the aisle, a woman nudged her partner. People were beginning to pay attention. Emily scanned her tablet screen quickly. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said at last. "We're fully booked in first class today." Patricia's stomach tightened. Emily offered a sympathetic smile. "I could check in economy. There might be an available seat there." Heat surged in Patricia's cheeks. "Economy? That was unthinkable." Her voice faltered. "That won't be necessary." Emily's smile remained intact. "In that case, I hope you don't mind remaining in your assigned seat." Patricia pressed a forced smile onto her lips. "I guess I don't have a choice." Emily nodded. "Just let me know if you need anything else." She walked away, but Patricia hardly noticed. Her ears buzzed. Daniel hadn't said a single word. He turned back to his laptop and resumed typing. That was his response. No words, no reaction, just complete dismissal. Her hands clenched into fists. This wasn't finished. She let out a sharp breath and hit the call button again. This time, Emily didn't come immediately. When she did return, her tone was more cautious. "Yes, ma'am." Patricia straightened her posture. "I need to speak with someone in charge." Emily's expression didn't change. "I'm the lead flight attendant on this flight. Is there something specific you need clarified?" Patricia's voice grew firmer. "I want to speak with the pilot or the head crew member." A ripple of murmurs moved through the first-class cabin. Someone even stifled a small laugh. Emily remained composed, but the tension around her was more noticeable. "The pilot is currently preparing for takeoff and won't be available. I'm happy to help you, though." Patricia's lips pressed tightly together. Her jaw clenched. Daniel, on the other hand, was still unfazed. He showed no signs of anxiety or discomfort, like he'd been through this scenario before. Lowering her voice, Patricia said, "I don't feel safe." Everything changed. Emily's polite smile faded. Her stance became rigid. Daniel stopped typing altogether. Across the aisle, a man wearing a Bluetooth headset muttered, "Here we go again." Emily straightened her shoulders. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you explain what you mean by that?" Patricia folded her hands in her lap, tilting her head slightly. "I just feel uneasy," she said. She paused, long enough to hint at something more without directly saying it. "I'm not trying to be a problem, but I think it's better if someone else sits here." Daniel shut his laptop and looked her square in the eye. For the first time, Patricia felt unsure, but she wasn't done. Not yet. Her voice grew louder, the cabin went quiet. Her words now hung thickly in the air. I don't feel safe. The statement was deliberate, chosen to provoke a reaction. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Emily remained by her side, unmoving. Her body language stiffened and her gaze flicked toward Daniel. He had completely closed his laptop now. His hands rested calmly on it. No smile, no frown, he just looked directly at Patricia. Watching her closely, Patricia held firm, at least for now. Emily released a slow breath. "Ma'am," she said gently, "are you saying you feel unsafe?" Patricia gave a subtle tilt of her head, a slight shrug. "I'm not saying that. I'm just not at ease, that's all." From across the aisle, a man with a Bluetooth headset scoffed under his breath. Unreal. 3 rows back, a young woman subtly lifted her phone, pretending to type, though she was clearly recording. Other passengers murmured, their eyes now on Patricia. She felt it, the change in atmosphere, the growing disapproval. Still, she held her ground. "This is a simple request," she said, layering her tone with civility. "If I'm feeling uneasy, I should have the option to relocate. Isn't that fair?" Emily's jaw tensed. "Ma'am, I've already confirmed. First class is full." Patricia's mouth drew into a tight line, and coach. Emily paused briefly. "There are 2 available seats in economy." Patricia lifted her chin. "Great, he can take one of them." The low buzz of disapproval grew louder among the passengers. Daniel let out a quiet breath, his fingers tapping his laptop once before going still. He said nothing, didn't react, but he didn't move either. Emily blinked as if needing to replay what she'd just heard. Her voice dropped slightly, now firmer. "Just to confirm, ma'am, you're requesting that I relocate this passenger to economy because you don't wish to sit next to him?" Patricia gave a crisp nod, sitting taller. "Yes." Emily inhaled sharply through her nose. "That's not going to happen." Patricia's eyes widened. "Excuse me." Emily clasped her hands in front of her, tone steady and resolute. "Mr. Stokes has a first-class ticket, same as you. He's in his correct seat. I won't, and cannot ask him to move." Color rose in Patricia's cheeks. Control was slipping from her grasp. Passengers were openly staring now. Some whispering, others shaking their heads. The woman with the phone was still filming. A knot twisted in Patricia's stomach. "This is absurd," she hissed. "I'm only requesting the same courtesy anyone else would get if they were uncomfortable." Emily remained firm. "You're asking me to remove a fellow paying. Moving a ticketed passenger from his assigned seat in first class to economy without a legitimate reason is not a reasonable request. It's discrimination." A hush fell over the cabin. Someone let out a quiet whistle. Daniel hadn't shifted or spoken. He simply looked at Patricia, calm and composed. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest. This wasn't how she imagined things unfolding. Emily straightened her back. "Ma'am, we're about to begin taxiing. If you cannot remain seated and comply with the crew's directions, I'll need to ask you to leave the aircraft." Patricia's stomach dropped. What Emily's tone stayed courteous but firm. "You have 2 choices. Either sit quietly in your assigned seat or exit the plane. But Mr. Stokes will not be moved." A few passengers clapped under their breath. Patricia felt heat crawl up her neck. This wasn't the outcome she expected. She had never been the one publicly corrected. She started to protest, but before she got the chance, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket, took out a leather badge holder, flipped it open, and held it up. And just like that, the mood shifted entirely. A gold FBI badge sparkled under the cabin lights. Gasps rippled through the passengers. A few even let out stunned laughs. The young woman with the phone recording zoomed in for a closer shot. Daniel's tone remained calm. His face unreadable. "Ma'am," he said, voice smooth and steady, tilting his head slightly, "would you like to file a formal complaint? I can take your statement right now." Patricia's breath caught. No words came out. Daniel stayed still, patient, unwavering, and for the first time she felt genuinely cornered. But Patricia wasn't just embarrassed. She was about to face actual repercussions. The silence stretched thick between them, tense, and suffocating Daniel's badge. Reflected in the fluorescent lights, its golden seal impossible to ignore, it was the kind of moment that instantly changed the dynamic. What was whispered before now hung in open stares and quiet smirks. Some passengers looked amused, others stunned by the reveal. Patricia's mouth went dry, her mind searched desperately for a justification or way to backtrack. This wasn't the scenario she had planned. The man she'd tried to have ejected, the one she insinuated posed a threat, was a federal agent. Her throat constricted. Daniel's expression remained unchanged. No smirk, no satisfaction. He simply sat, FBI badge in hand, staring directly at her. His voice was calm, even, toned, and impossible to read. "Would you like to file an official complaint, ma'am?" The sentence landed like a blow, heavy and inescapable. Patricia felt frozen in place, warmth creeping up her neck and spreading across her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but all that came out was a weak, broken "I." Daniel cocked his head slightly. "You said you were uncomfortable," he said coolly, voice still measured but edged with meaning. "That's a serious claim on a federal flight. If you believe I've acted inappropriately, I'll gladly take your statement now." Patricia felt her stomach twist. She could sense the shift. Moments earlier, she had been in control, commanding the tone, anticipating support, waiting for someone to validate her discomfort, but not anymore. Now all eyes were on her. A man a couple of rows ahead chuckled softly. "This is gold," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. The young woman who had been recording earlier subtly zoomed in, her camera now fixed on Patricia's increasingly panicked expression. Emily, still standing close by, had her arms folded. Her face was neutral, but something behind her eyes revealed more, an awareness, a quiet expectation. She, like everyone else, was waiting. Patricia's breath grew shallow and quick. She couldn't confess she had lied, that she'd fabricated the discomfort just to push Daniel out of his seat. But pressing forward meant accusing a federal officer of being a threat on a plane, an accusation that wouldn't end with just murmurs and raised eyebrows. It would bring real consequences. Her hands trembled on her lap. Daniel hadn't flinched, hadn't looked away. Eventually, after what seemed like an endless pause, Patricia gave a subtle shake of her head. "No," she whispered, "no complaint." Daniel gave a small nod, as if he had anticipated that response. Without saying another word, he shut the badge case, slipped it back inside his jacket, and reopened his laptop. His attention returned to his screen, and just like that, it was over, for him. But for Patricia, it was only the beginning of a nightmare. A few passengers whispered their support. Some offered soft, restrained applause. The man across the aisle gave a knowing smirk and returned to reading his newspaper. The woman with the phone, she was already typing. Patricia's chest tightened. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She desperately wanted to disappear into the seat. She wished she could vanish, rewind time, and erase the past 10 minutes, but there was no going back. She had humiliated herself in front of everyone. Worse still, people had seen it all and recorded it. Her eyes flicked anxiously around the cabin, looking for an ally, anyone who might offer a sympathetic glance. But no one did. Not even Emily, the one person who had shown her patience, now wore a cold, distant expression. Patricia swallowed hard. She wanted to fight back, to say something that would reclaim control. Yet deep down, she knew there was nothing left to say. The plane hadn't even taken off yet, and somehow she'd already lost. But Patricia wasn't just embarrassed. She was about to face serious consequences. She sat rigidly, staring straight ahead, her breaths shallow and her cheeks burning. This wasn't mere embarrassment, it was humiliation. Daniel had already moved on, flipping open his laptop and typing calmly, as if she didn't exist. The rest of the cabin, however, hadn't forgotten. Across the aisle, The businessman with the Bluetooth smirked quietly. The woman recording had stopped typing, though her phone remained tilted upward, waiting for Patricia to react. Even the flight attendants, who were supposed to remain impartial, carried a different energy now. Emily, the lead attendant, stood nearby, watching. Patricia felt the weight of their silent judgment pressing down on her. She had seriously misjudged the situation. Her fingers twitched in her lap as her heart pounded. This wasn't a minor misunderstanding she could laugh off with a dismissive wave. She had tried to get an FBI agent removed from his seat on camera. The consequences were sinking in, heavy and suffocating, drying out her mouth. Emily finally stepped closer, her tone still polite but no longer gentle. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "I need to be sure you're able to remain on this flight without causing further disruption." Patricia stiffened. Several passengers glanced over, pretending not to listen but clearly paying attention. She wanted to snap back, to demand why she was being treated like the problem when all she'd done was express discomfort. But Daniel's badge had changed everything. She was trapped now. The control she believed she had was gone. Forcing her lips into what she hoped was a composed expression, she said, "I'm fine." Emily's eyes lingered on her a moment longer before she nodded slowly. "I'm going to hold you to that," she said, then turned and walked away. Patricia exhaled shakily, clasping her hands tightly in her lap. It was over, or so she thought. A sharp chime cut through the silence. She looked up just as the young woman with the phone smirked at her screen and tapped twice. Patricia's stomach clenched. She recognized that look, the one she'd seen on her own grandchildren's faces when they shared something online meant to spread quickly. Her fingers dug into the armrest as her heart pounded. She turned slightly and stole a glance at the woman's screen. The video was already posted. Patricia felt the air rush out of her lungs. The caption was simple: "Racist woman tries to remove black man from first class, then learns he's FBI." Her hands went cold. The plane hadn't even taken off yet, and somehow she had already lost. And since it was already online, there was no stopping what would come next. She turned back forward, struggling to steady her breathing, trying to convince herself maybe it wouldn't be so bad, maybe no one would care, maybe it wouldn't spread. Her phone vibrated in her purse once, twice, then a third time. Patricia's chest tightened. She didn't want to look, she didn't want to know, but her hands moved on their own, digging through her bag, fingers wrapping around the device. She pulled it out and her stomach sank. Text messages from acquaintances, family, even people she hadn't heard from in months, all variations of the same question. "Patricia, is this real? You just saw the video. Tell me this isn't true. Oh my God, what did you do?" Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Trembling, she swiped open her browser and tapped on Twitter. It took less than a second. Her name was already trending. The video had been posted less than 5 minutes ago, yet it had already been viewed over 20,000 times. And the comments poured in. Patricia's vision blurred as she read the first few. "Karma is real. This lady really thought she could get away with it. Hope." She braced herself for the internet backlash she was about to face. Patricia's breath caught in her throat. Her world wasn't just falling apart. It was going up in flames, and for the first time she understood there was no turning back from this. But what happened after the plane touched down was far worse than anything she had imagined. Patricia gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles whitened. The surrounding cabin noise faded into nothingness, overwhelmed by the relentless pounding of her own heartbeat. She struggled to breathe. The video kept spreading, the view count climbing every time she refreshed. 30,000, 42,000, 61,000. There was no sign of it slowing down. Her eyes blinked rapidly as her mind desperately searched for an escape, a way to stop the damage before it was too late. But it was already too late. She scrolled down, reading more comments. Imagine being this entitled. El Mao. She really thought she could get away with it. The FBA part made my whole day. Instant karma. Expose her name. We need to know who she is. Her chest tightened. She glanced around the cabin as if willing time to rewind, but no one was looking at her anymore. They had seen all they needed to. She shifted uneasily in her seat, her body stiff. Daniel, still sitting beside her, hadn't moved. His fingers tapped softly on his laptop keyboard. If he knew about the video, he didn't show it. And he didn't seem to care. Somehow, that made it even worse. Her phone buzzed again. She flinched, then looked down. It was her sister calling. She hesitated, then, with a trembling finger, pressed decline. She wasn't ready to have that conversation. She wasn't ready for any of this. The plane had barely left the ground, yet her entire world was already crumbling. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay composed. She needed a plan, a way to make this right. Maybe apologizing would help. No, that would only fan the flames. She could ignore it, pretend she hadn't seen the video. No, that was worse. Her thoughts raced, colliding and spiraling out of control. Then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Washington, D.C. The local time is 5:43 p.m. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened as we prepare for landing. Patricia's heart sank. Landing. She had been so consumed by the chaos inside the cabin. She had become so consumed by the chaos inside the plane that she had completely forgotten what awaited her outside. With trembling hands, she refreshed the video one final time. 97 zeros. 0 views. Her name was trending, and her hands trembled as she shoved her phone back into her bag, desperately trying to convince herself she could still get ahead of this, that maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't be as terrible as she feared. Patricia held on to hope that the storm would subside, until she switched on the news. The moment the plane doors opened, Patricia practically bolted from her seat. She ignored the sideways glances, the muffled chuckles, and the silent judgments hanging in the air. All she wanted was to get away. But as she hurried through Reagan National Airport, her heart skipped a beat at what she saw near baggage claim, a small cluster of reporters, not a massive crowd yet, but enough to send a chill through her. A woman in a navy blazer held a microphone close to her mouth, reading from her phone as a cameraman recorded. The now viral video shows an unidentified woman trying to have an FBI agent removed from first class, citing discomfort. The clip has amassed over 1 million views in just a few hours. Patricia's breath caught. 1 million, that was impossible. She quickly glanced around, silently praying no one had spotted her, but a reporter's eyes locked on hers and the woman's face lit up. Wait, that's her. Panic surged through Patricia's chest. She spun on her heel, wanting nothing more than to disappear. Her heels clicked sharply on the tile as she rushed toward the exit, her phone vibrating violently in her purse with texts, missed calls, and notifications. She couldn't outrun it. Pushing past a group of travelers, breath shallow and palms clammy, she barely made it outside before a voice called after her, "Miss Langford, do you have a response to the video?" She winced. She hadn't even realized her name was public yet. A taxi slowed near the curb, and she nearly threw herself into the back seat. "Go." She snapped at the driver. He raised an eyebrow but pulled away without a word. Pressing her hands to her temples and closing her eyes tightly, Patricia thought again of the 1 million views. Her stomach churned with dread. She had carefully constructed her entire life around managing her reputation, a polished image, a respected name, but in the span of an afternoon it all vanished. Her phone buzzed again, this time displaying an unknown number. Her heart raced as she stared at it. Just before it could go to voicemail, she swiped to answer. "Hello." A brief pause, then a crisp voice came through. Miss Langford, this is James Rowlands, chair of the Marston Foundation. I assume you're aware of the situation." Patricia's mouth dried up instantly. She had been on the Marston Foundation board for years, a charity known for its progressive values, inclusivity, and ethical leadership. She already knew what this call meant. Swallowing hard, she began, "James, we're going to need you to step down." He cut her off abruptly. She stared ahead, stunned. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Her pulse pounded loudly in her ears. "But this is being taken out of context. The board disagrees," she argued. His voice was flat, resolute. "We'll release a public statement by morning. We expect your resignation by then." Before she could respond, a sharp beep indicated he had ended the call. Patricia lowered her phone slowly. Her career was finished, her reputation shattered. The worst part, nobody cared to hear her side. They had seen the video, and that was enough. She exhaled shakily. This was beyond her control. She had caused this to herself, and now she had to face the consequences. Meanwhile, Daniel Stokes hadn't given her another thought. By now, he was likely in a meeting, completely unfazed. His life continued uninterrupted because, for him, this was just another Tuesday. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more compelling real-life situations.